Hello, fifth graders. Mrs. Webb bringing you science from my home office.
Today we're going to investigate the properties of a series of white powders. Your learning target today is to understand that different substances have different properties. You will put this knowledge to test at the end by identifying 3 mystery powders. One way to discover the different properties of substances is to perform tests on each substance. Today, we're going to look at 5 white powders: salt, talc, flour, baking soda, and baking powder. We're going to use 4 different tests to test the properties of each of these powders. The first test is the appearance test, describing what it looks like and comparing it to the others. The second test, solubility. Does it dissolve in water? The third test, vinegar. When we add vinegar to a substance, if it bubbles, the substance is changing. If it doesn't bubble, then it does not cause a change. And the fourth test is the iodine test. The iodine test will detect if there is starch in the substance or not. If there's starch in the substance, the iodine will turn a dark purpley color. If there is no starch, the iodine will stay brown. As we're conducting tests today, you will need a chart like this one to record the results of each test. You can print the worksheet provided for you or draw your own chart on a blank piece of paper. Pause the video and do that now. Do you have your chart ready? Let's get started. We're going to start with salt. We're going to put a little bit of salt into our jar and do the first test. For the appearance test, we're simply going to look at the powder and describe it. How would you describe the appearance of salt? I would describe them as white, clear crystals. I'm going to record that description on my worksheet. Salt. Appearance, white, clear crystals. Next is the solubility test. First, I'm going to measure 30 milliliters of water. For the solubility test, we are looking to see if the substance dissolves in water. We can tell if it dissolves if the substance disappears. Here you can see that the water is practically clear. The substance didn't bunch up or clump, and it's not settling to the bottom.
So on my paper, right here for solubility, I'm going to write dissolves in water.
Next, we're going to do the vinegar test.
Take a little bit with my dropper, and I'm going to add it to the salt. And what we're going to watch for is if it's bubbling or not.
Can you see any bubbles? I do not see any bubbles. Let me add that to my chart. Under vinegar, does not bubble.
One more test to do.
The iodine test. Iodine is this brown liquid.
And we're going to look to see if it stays brown or if it changes into a dark blue or purple color.
What do you think? Did it change color? I think it did not change color. It stayed brown. Let's record that on our chart under iodine. Does not turn dark or purple. We now have the 4 tests completed for one substance. Before we switch to a new powder, we need to clean up our mess. Now we're going to run the same 4 tests with talc. Appearance test. How would you describe the talc powder? I would call it white and powdery. Solubility test. Does the talc powder mix in with the water? What do you think? I see it clumping together and settling on the bottom. Talc does not dissolve in water. Vinegar test. When we add vinegar, we're looking for the substance to bubble. Do you see any bubbles? I don't either. It does not bubble with vinegar. Iodine test. We're looking to see if the iodine changes color. Do you see it changing color? It stayed brown. Here are the results of the 4 tests that we performed for talc. Now you can compare them to salt. You see that the appearance of salt and talc are quite different. And salt is soluble. It dissolves in water, whereas talc does not dissolve in water. Neither of them bubble with vinegar, and neither of them react with iodine. Cleanup time. Now let's test the flour. Appearance test. How would you describe the flour? Solubility test. What do you think? Did it dissolve in water? Vinegar test. Do you see any bubbles? Iodine test. Did you see the iodine change color? That indicates that flour contains starch. Look at our chart. Did you get the same results as I did? If you compared just talc and flour, they would be almost identical. They're both white and powdery. They both do not dissolve in water. They do not bubble with vinegar. But the iodine turned dark for flour. It contains starch. Talc does not. Gotta clean up. Now let's test baking soda. Appearance test. Can you see that baking soda looks slightly grainy? Solubility test. Baking soda settles. Can you see the baking soda settling at the bottom of the jar? Vinegar test. Can you see the bubbles? Iodine test. Does the iodine change color or stay brown? Let's take a look at our chart all filled out for baking soda. Did you write down the same things that I did? Compare baking soda to the other powders. Baking soda is grainy, not powdery or crystal-like, and it is the only one that bubbles with vinegar. Clean it up. Now let's test our last powder, baking powder. Appearance test. Describe this powder. Is it similar to any others? Solubility test. Did baking powder disappear in the water or leave it cloudy? Vinegar test. Does it bubble? Iodine test. Does the iodine change color? Get your chart filled out for baking powder. Now that we have identified the properties of all 5 powders, we can look at the chart to compare. No 2 powders on this chart have the same properties. This is how we can determine which powder is which. Now you can use this information and the knowledge about testing for properties to play the mystery powder game. Your objective is to correctly identify 3 out of 3 mystery powders. First, you'll watch the video and look at the results of the 4 tests that are conducted on each powder. Be prepared to pause the video as you look at these tests. Compare your results to the chart of properties of the 5 powders. Then write the name down of each powder. Once you identified the 3 powders, email those in order 1, 2, 3 to Mrs. Webb at dwebb@bethelsd.org. I will send a prize home to anyone who gets all 3 correct. Good luck! Before you get started, you might want to make a chart to record the information from the 4 tests. Now let's get started.